Hey, y'all, it's Rick here. Happy Juneteenth to you all. I have a special prayer that I'll be ending with today that will help us celebrate that. Before that, though, let's begin as we always begin here on Uncommon Communion. Let us remember that we are always and everywhere in the holy presence of God and each other. So I have not recorded since my trip to Pittsburgh earlier this week. And you might remember, as I recorded right before I left, which was Tuesday morning, that I was pretty upset and a little apprehensive about going. This, again, if you did not hear that, it was my first cousin, Greg, who died a week earlier suddenly at just age 59 of complications from alcoholism. And I was not sure what it was going to be like going to be in a place where it is not commonly discussed. And the it that I mean, the elephant in my family's living room and many families' living rooms, is alcoholism and mental illness. And I wasn't sure if there would be an opportunity for me to share some of my own experience of recovery with family members. And I went with an open mind. I went without an agenda, without expectations. And I think that served me well because I did have the opportunity to talk with both of Greg's children. Now, his children, he's got a son and a daughter. They are in their, I believe, late 20s, early 30s ish. So, they are considerably older, a few years older than my children, even though Greg was just 3 years older than me. But his two kids were receptive to what I had to share about my recognizing their grief and also their anger. Because, one of the things about being in relationship with an addict or an alcoholic is they can be very, very aggravating and frustrating and disappointing. They're going to let you down. And I know that Greg's two children were at different ways and different levels estranged from him. They had difficult relationships. And I was able to say to them, I understood and open the door for them if they were interested in talking at any point about this. And also open the door to let them rage. I said, I understand if you're feeling angry and rageful in the midst of guilt and grief and all of those other things that are present when someone dies under these circumstances with many things in relationships unresolved. I said, I get that. I understand that. And if you want to talk about it, you have my number. So I feel that opening the door, we never know. We open a door, we provide an invitation, and we never know if and when or how that might be accepted or not. You know, I reached out to Greg a number of years ago with a AA Big Book. As I've shared here before, I don't attend Alcoholics Anonymous. That's not where my addiction has led me, alcoholism. But I've been to many open AA meetings, and I reached out. I gave him a big book, offered to take him to a meeting. He never responded. He never said yes to that. And yet, I think it made a difference. And hopefully, it will make a difference in opening the door to his children, my second cousins, who I remember when they were babies. I remember when they were in arms. And it's just amazing to know somebody their whole life. Maybe not to know them super well, but to know them their whole life. I also was reflecting on what family means. And there is an interesting family member who I really quite like. She is an older lady. I'm not going to say a name here, but She is the widow of I guess from my perspective, it would be a cousin. And he took his own life a number of years ago, probably 15 or 20 years ago now. It's been a while. And although the number of people in the family she is directly connected to, and certainly none of them are by blood, she is by marriage, she still is a part of the family. And she was there at the funeral home for the visitation, and she was there at the dinner between the times at the afternoon and the evening time at the funeral home. And I don't know what others in my extended family might think. There might be grumbling, like, why is she here, kind of thing. That's not me. I really deeply, deeply, deeply believe in hospitality and welcome. And I welcome her. And I was really glad she was there. There was another person I could talk to. And we had a really interesting conversation about God and faith. And she had an interesting job back when she was working. And we talked about that. And I was so glad she's there, and was there, and is there, that she is a part of the family. Because I know it means a lot to her, and it means a lot to me. So, again, I think families are what we make them. Families are tough, and yet families are where we start. That is where we learn, for better or for worse. That is where we connect, and perhaps, hopefully, that is also where we stay connected. I know that there are other ways that we form family. I know for me, recovery is a way that I have formed family. And sometimes we actually, like Al Anon in particular, I don't currently attend Al Anon, but a lot of times Al Anon meetings don't call themselves, they call themselves family groups is what they call. And not just for family members, but they are like a family. And we reconfigure and reconstruct, better relationships if we had difficult relationships with our immediate family members or our blood family members. But nevertheless, I was glad I went. The day went smoothly getting there and back. I got home kind of late, and I've been a little tired and just haven't really been that with it since then. But it is good to be back with you, recording and sharing. And again, I appreciate thoughts and prayers as I've gone through this loss this past week. So I want to conclude with a few words about Juneteenth, and my gratitude that this is now a federal holiday. My gratitude that the agency that I work for had a Juneteenth celebration yesterday. I was disappointed that I couldn't make it. The agency has two main parts. One is here in Columbus, the other is up in the Cleveland area. And the Juneteenth picnic, I believe it was kind of an afternoon lunch, the evening picnic, was at a park with food and games. And it sounded like it would be a really, really enjoyable time. Unfortunately, I couldn't take off because I was off Tuesday and I couldn't make the trip up there. But I'm so glad that they did it. I am so grateful for my agency. Just a few days ago, we celebrated the diversity of people in the participation in the Pride Parade. And here we are celebrating this national holiday. And again, the diversity of the people who work for the agency and also who we support at the agency. So again, I'm grateful that was there. And I'm grateful for this day that we celebrate liberation. We celebrate the end of slavery. Let's be blunt. That is what this day is about. And there are more and more people today that don't want to acknowledge that dark part of our history, that original sin, as some have called it, of America. I just read the book, listened to the audiobook, James. I'd heard a lot about it, and it was really interesting because if you don't know about it, I highly recommend it. It's a fairly short book, and it moves pretty quickly. The audiobook was excellent. The reader was very good. And the story, if you haven't heard about it or seen it, it was on many best of lists of, I believe, last year. It is the story of Jim, who is the runaway slave that is in Huckleberry Finn, right? You might remember Huckleberry Finn, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Huck goes onto the river, kind of a early road trip, story, river trip, if you will. And it is about Huck Finn gives us one version of Jim. The book James gives us another version. And for me, it was really, really illuminating. And I think it just is a really good story. And it talks about, how what is the need for liberation and revenge, and how do we navigate relationships. It was a really, really enjoyable listen, and I commend that to you here today. I want to end with a quote, and we can make this our prayer, from another person that I commend to you, James Cone, Cone. And I'll put links to both the book James and also James Cone, to one of his most renowned books. And he was died a number of years ago. He was a Black liberation theologian, and he talked a lot about the Blackness of Christ and how Christ, in a very real way, Jesus the Christ, articulated in his life what it means to be Black in America. Not literally, of course, because obviously Jesus, lived well before, America was in existence. But Cone was very emphatic in multiple works, talking about how the enslavement and the oppression that Jesus the Christ felt also is something that enslaved and people who are not free from racism and hatred and bigotry, that they can resonate with and that they could relate to. So I'm going to read this little quote here. It is from one of his books. This is from a book called The Cross and the Lynching Tree. And he says this, and we'll end our prayer with this. He says, "The gospel of Jesus is not a rational concept to be explained in a theory of salvation, but a story about God's presence in Jesus' solidarity with the oppressed, which led to his death on the cross. What is redemptive is the faith that God snatches victory out of defeat, life out of death, and hope out of despair." And I think, again, powerful words from a powerful book. Again, I'll link to it. On this day that we celebrate liberation and freedom, on this day that I mourn the death of a loved one who died from a form of oppression. Alcoholism, addiction is a form of oppression, not in the same way that something like racism or many other of the ways that people are systemically oppressed, but very much so. It takes away your freedom. So we celebrate today liberation. We celebrate today the Black experience in America and the freedom that all of us are seeking for, the justice that all of us are looking for, the solidarity that, especially in this day and age, that is what God wants for us and what Christ's redemption means and gives to us. So again, thank you all for being here. Blessing and good. Be gentle. Be well.